as designers, we have a responsibility to add substance to the world. We can bring things to fruition that have deep meaning and are quite useful and help people in profound ways.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into Nodes of Design. To help support our mission spread knowledge, we have a very special guest on today's episode. Let's welcome Christopher Riggs, who is a creative director with deep experience in leading creative teams to do smart, original and meaningful work. Chris has helped many global brands to craft their immersive experience narratives, digital interactions for companies like Facebook, Google, Activision, Nike, Starbucks, Hyatt, and many more. Presently, Chris is working as creative director across the ecosystem of WebEx products, where he works with globally distributed team of amazing designers to innovate on the future of the work. Chris also holds few teaching positions with Academy of Art University and California College of Arts. In this episode, Chris had shared wonderful insights on evocative design. We discussed on what exactly is evocative design and how does it impact user psychology and what are the various ways in designing to incite emotions. Later, we discussed on how we could measure the success rate of emotions being generated from the product or service that we design and how we could leverage design thinking in evocative design. We spoke on the situation like this pandemic with a lot of work happening virtually that design has a critical role in stimulating imagination, emotions and connections. So what are the learnings that we can take from this kind of situation to create these evocative experiences to the end user? Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and on every Friday we release new episodes with different creative leaders from around the world to help you better understand different concepts related to design. So don't forget to tune in into Notes of Design every Friday. With that being said, happy designing everyone. Hi, Christopher. Welcome to Nodes of Design. It's a pleasure hosting you today on our show.
Hey, good to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really honored to be a guest on this podcast, and definitely humbled to be among some really great speakers you've featured here. So yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Christopher, how's your day going?
Good so far. I'm just getting started. So it's morning where I am, but yeah, happy it's Friday. Ready for a nice weekend.
That's great, Christopher. If you could give a brief about yourself to our audience out there.
Well, I'm Chris. I'm a designer, creative director, working in San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been working in this area for about 15 years. I currently lead a team of designers and writers within Cisco's collaboration business unit. Many folks will know that as WebEx, as well as other products and services that are all geared toward connecting individuals and teams, especially in our current situation, right? And so, this ability to create really vibrant remote work culture, that's what we're after. And so ultimately, myself and my team were responsible for developing our visual language across our collaboration portfolio. And so this is really just about bringing our brand to life through strong visual language and storytelling, motion design, UX writing, etc. So we're responsible for how the essence of our brand manifests in our experiences. In addition to that, we also we build and maintain the delivery mechanism for this in our products, and that's our design system that we call Momentum. And so that falls on our team as well. So again, that's how we actually bring this brand into our products consistently. Previous to my current role, I worked at a design and strategy consultancy for over a decade in San Francisco, and I have to say I was really fortunate in that role to be able to work with some amazing brands like Nike and Starbucks, IBM, Activision, Facebook, and so on. So that it was just a great career experience and a lot of fun. So currently live on the peninsula. For those that are familiar with the Bay Area, I live on the peninsula with my wife. We have an 8-year-old daughter and a little puppy.
Thank you, Christopher. So what was your journey into design? How did you start? And what are your tips to the beginners on how to start?
Yeah, so I'm a native Californian, and I maybe just to take the way back machine for a minute. So I grew up just absolutely obsessed with skateboarding, and skateboarding is actually the act of skateboarding as well as the culture of skateboarding. Like it's quite creative. I mean, you sort of obsess and focus on learning tricks and then sort of doing them with style. And it's just a really exhilarating sport. Of course, it has, all sorts of physical toll. But what's interesting about that is, when I eventually discovered design, it was really exciting for me because I realized that like that same kind of like energy and risk taking I could channel into creating lasting artifacts, right? So like, again, the skateboarding and that culture, like the act of skateboarding is ephemeral. It's a performance in a way, and it's quite physical. But again, I was excited to be able to channel that energy and say, hey, like through design, you can actually express yourself and make tangible things and things that are lasting. And that was quite exciting for me. Of course, style, is incredibly important in design, and so that felt good. It was rewarding, and I really discovered something that I was just quite passionate about. And then this may be a little cliche, but I think design really helped me learn how to look outward and like really see the world in a new way. New skills of observing and finding inspiration in what may be quite mundane things in the world. And so again, I thought that was really exciting. Like all around us, we could find incredible inspiration and sort of channel that into what we design. So in a way, this was kind of an awakening for me, I guess you could say, just realizing that this pursuit of creative expression could really be, a lasting goal and ultimately a career path. So that was a great shift for me. In terms of your question about, in terms of tips, for folks who are just getting started, I think focusing on craft is such a critical part. For us as designers, I would say take the time to really learn the basics of composition and form, juxtaposition and contrast, like all sort of the real foundational elements of design. Like these are critical, and these will serve you at all points in your career. And technical knowledge, I think, can be learned fairly easily, but craft really requires patience and persistence, and of course, incredibly hard work. And you just have to love it. So I think finding your passion in design is super important. And then look for inspiration in all sorts of places. I had a teacher years ago who used to he would always tell us, like, don't look at design manuals for inspiration. That's where you'll find design execution that's already been reinterpreted by a designer. So instead, look into the world. Look at art and science and performing arts, music, etc. And you can, you really use that as raw material in what you're creating. And that's something that's stuck with me for a long time now.
Thank you so much, Chris, for taking us through your wonderful journey.
Of course.
So let's begin our discussion today with evocative design. So what exactly is evocative design, and how does it impact user psychology?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying that, evocative design, I wouldn't characterize it necessarily as a discipline. I mean, it's really more of a mindset, I'd say, for how we create lasting bonds with audiences or our users. And so this goes beyond functional benefits, right? I think for any product or service, like functional benefits are table stakes, like, ease of use, reliability, etc. Like a product cannot exist without these. And so we can take it a step further. And I think, really what we're after is this idea of creating irrational loyalty. And so what that is, think about any brand that you're drawn to, perhaps loyal to. And it could be a fashion brand, it could be a car, it could be a beverage company. It doesn't really matter, but something that you are drawn to. And it's likely more than just because it works well and it's reliable. But again, like it may be that it evokes some emotion for you. And that's great, right? So we're drawn to things that make us feel good, that help us feel empowered, confident, etc. That's really what we're after. I mean, as humans, we're emotional beings. I think we're really drawn to these experiences that move us in some way. And I just want to be clear, like, this is not about manipulation, right? Design, I think I would say as designers, we have a responsibility to add substance to the world, right? It's like we can bring things to fruition that have deep meaning and are quite useful and really help people in profound ways. Some folks may know of a German industrial designer by the name of Dieter Rams, who introduced what he called the 10 principles for good design, I believe in the 1970s. And these are things like, good design is innovative, it's useful, it's aesthetically pleasing, it's understandable and unobtrusive and honest and long lasting and thorough. These are all his sort of 10 principles. And what's interesting about these is that there's a real balance of functional and emotional benefits here. So functional in the sense that, yes, a product or service must be useful. But then, he weaves in aesthetic and honest trust. And these are things that, again, like it's that combination of these principles that really make us and help us be drawn to products and services in a more, I'd say, irrational or emotive way. So I think that, I think that's the starting point for how we think about evocative design.
Thank you, Chris. So any steps you suggest for designing to incite emotions?
Indeed. So I think it always starts with empathy. So really knowing who you're designing for and what their needs are. It has to start there, right? Because we don't, it's our job is not to impose or sort of dictate a way of experiencing our product or service, but we really want to understand where our users and where our audiences are at. Of course, simplicity. This is critical, and related to that, we don't want to overwhelm folks with messaging. I think I'm a firm believer that I think people really only remember a handful of things, maybe up to 3 things. I don't know, but that's important to consider. Like, how do we really create focus and a clear message that help people understand? Okay, this is the benefit of this product, and this is really what it'll do for me, or what it'll help me achieve. That's critical. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but finding passion in your work, like this will really come through in what you do. Like channel your creative energy into your work. And I think that's, that I can't underscore how important that is. And then one other thing, just related to simplicity is, and I touched on this a little bit, but this idea of creating a really focused story is important. We often talk about, in like long form narrative storytelling, we often talk about the elements of a story, right? And these are things like character or a protagonist, a setting, the plot, a conflict, and then ultimately some resolution. And these are true for products and services as well. We can apply these same elements of a story in these situations, right? So the character is often the user at the center of this experience. A setting is where this product actually takes place, and helping people orient themselves in this product or service, help them find what they need very easily. The plot, again, in the context of a product, is really how do we help people understand what can be accomplished and how? What is what is really the value of this? What is the value of it to people's lives? Conflict, we can help people, overcome obstacles, help them feel encouraged, and we can reward them as they go through the process of using our products and services. And then ultimately resolution, like success in completing relevant tasks and feeling empowered and confident and fulfilled. So that's, again, I think it's really interesting. We can think about storytelling and elements of long form narrative storytelling and apply that to the experiences that we create and the products that we're designing.
Thank you, Chris. So is there any way that we can measure the success rate of emotions that are being generated from a product or service?
Yep. How and what you measure really depends on what is being designed, right? So an example might be, let's take healthcare, for example. Perhaps you're designing a wellness program. Perhaps you measure the overall quality of physical and mental health and not just subscription rate, right? So I think if there's really a way to sort of dig a bit deeper and understand what the true benefit of our designs are and how they're being received by people. And often it's anecdotal, right? So qualitative stories that illustrate not just sort of the success, but like what are the critical needs that are being fulfilled. We often reference like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this is important to consider. So along the spectrum from just sort of basic human needs all the way up to self-actualization, like these are things we can think about, and we can look for anecdotal evidence and often data that really supports and helps us understand how are we delivering and sort of executing on these needs so that people are finding what they need in our products and services.
So Chris, is there a way that design thinking can be used in building these products with great emotions?
Yes. I mean, design thinking it's really an iterative process of problem solving, right? So design thinking helps us arrive at innovative solutions that typically are not immediately apparent. And so we leverage this process to uncover new ideas and new ways of thinking. So again, like in design thinking, we start with empathy, really understanding who our users are. We define their needs and really try to understand and define the problem. We ideate against that problem. We prototype to make ideas tangible and relatable, and then we test our hypotheses. And these are all critical steps. And so along this process, we can think about and sort of adopt this mindset of evocative design. So in defining the problem that we're solving for, we can ask ourselves, like, what is the role of design here? Is it about changing perception? Is it about inspiring action? Or perhaps it's just about getting out of the way and letting users explore and discover freely. So we really have to evaluate and understand the nature of the problem in order to develop a really clear intent. And then in terms of prototyping, I think this is another really interesting thing to consider with evocative design is, how do we make experiences and make our ideas visceral and bring, sort of tangible quality to it. And so we can draw on the senses, right? Touch, sight, hearing, smell, taste. We can reduce abstract concepts, or I should say, bring abstract concepts into more tangible form that we can touch and relate to. And that's a much better way to really help people understand them and will help us understand how they're being received by our users, right? Are they being moved in some way? And I think it's a great mindset to adopt.
Thank you, Chris. So I wanted to understand your opinion on this because, like, for situations like this pandemic with a lot of work happening virtually, the design has a very critical role in stimulating imaginations, emotions, and connections between people. So what do you think the major learnings that we can take from this kind of situation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I believe we're still learning. I mean, we're in this now. I think a lot of learning will be revealed in reflection. But what I can do is I can speak from personal experience. In my experience, there's a real need for experiences that help us navigate our conflicting worlds, right? So and I experience this every day, and work and family and personal health and sort of adopting new technologies. I think a lot of people are working through this. In addition to finding the community and connection that many of us have lost in the physical work environment. I think technology plays just an incredible role here, and not just, simply to recreate or simulate what many of us have lost in kind of in-person work culture, but instead to augment our new realities with the best of what technology has to offer, right? We can actually make experiences better and more fulfilling, and technology has a clear role to play there. And I want to say that, I'm not advocating for like a sort of Ready Player One like future where everyone escapes into virtual worlds. I think, obviously, physical connection and sort of, physical workspaces and whatnot will continue to exist, and we'll and probably find ourselves, back there shortly. But I think there's truly a paradigm shift here. I think many of us have discovered and adopted a completely new way of working, and that's really important. So, using technology to help us, navigate this new reality is really important, and find new ways of working that's not a compromise, but perhaps is it's actually better and, like I said, more fulfilling and exciting and fun. So that's my hope, and that's what I'm pretty excited about, actually.
Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing this wonderful insight. So can you please share with us, how does your typical day look like? Any interesting stories that you want to point out to?
Sure. Yeah. I imagine lots of people can relate to this, but my days are typically pretty full. I'll start from the beginning. I get up early. I mentioned earlier that we have a little puppy in our lives now, so I get up early with our puppy and take her out for a little run or whatever she needs. And then I take on the responsibility of I get my daughter up and get her ready and launched into her distance learning school. And then I dig into work. I'm pretty fortunate because, at WebEx, we actually design the tools that we use every day. So I'm here at home where I work, I'm well equipped with messaging, video conferencing, and, visualization tools like virtual whiteboarding, in addition to collaboration devices that we design and use. So I'm pretty fortunate in that sense. So I have a great setup here that allows me to work remotely. And so I'd start by catching up on various messages. Our teams work across many different time zones. And so my morning is often spent just sort of catching up and seeing what's been happening on the other side of the world. I spend a fair amount of time, reviewing work and co-creating with my team and others. I also value one-on-one time, and I typically have at least one or two one-on-ones a day, and that's with my team, that's with folks outside of my team. But that's really valuable time just to connect one-on-one, and sometimes it's purely about work. Other times it's just chit chat, and I think that's equally valuable. To really sort of establish strong working relationships and bonds with people is just essential. I try to carve time for spontaneity and heads down work. So I like to block time on my calendar. So I just have time to work and dig into things that come up, go find fresh inspiration, whatever the case may be. But I like that open time to just, fill it with whatever is valuable for me at that moment. And then in addition to that, I need to block bits of personal time to go wrangle my daughter and get her back into school, house chores, partner with my wife on various life things. That's all part of my day as well. So again, the new reality of sort of merging worlds of work and personal lives. So it's all good. Oh, and to your question about a story. Yeah. So something that comes to mind for me that that I started to do recently with my team is we dedicate an hour a month. It's a very little time commitment, but we dedicate a little time to something we call just a story hour. And so as part of one of our regular check-ins, we do a thing where we have a couple volunteers who will just tell a story. And again, it's an exercise in developing a story, delivering a story, practicing the art of storytelling. And the brief is quite open, right? It can be virtually any topic. Recently, one of my team members talked about his lifelong passion for motorcycles, and he told the story about his father and how his father, sort of introduced him to bikes, and it was a big part of his life, and it's something that's he's come to love, and it's a major part of his life. It's his hobby, but it's also his respite. He finds escape through going out and taking long rides, and he just told a great story and had awesome kind of photographic storytelling from his childhood and whatnot, and sort of documented all of the different motorcycles he had. I found this really cool. So this is a practice that we do, and it's just a lot of fun. Again, it's work related in the sense that we're telling stories, but it's really about helping us connect with our team and find those bonds within our team.
Thank you so much, Chris. So on a concluding note, love to hear 3 favorite books of yours and also 3 people who inspire you the most in this space.
Oh, but okay. I've been looking forward to this. I'm really excited. So books. So I'm going to maybe span some territory here. So the first one I wanted to talk about is a book called Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. And this is not a design book. But for those who are familiar with this author, so he this particular story is really it's a haunting love story set in Japan, and in typical Murakami fashion, it's melancholy. It deals with themes of isolation and loneliness. This probably sounds awful, but his stories are just they're magical, and he typically mixes kind of real world settings with these surreal fantasy worlds where supernatural things occur spontaneously. It's almost like that state of mind when you're sort of half awake and you're not quite sure if you're still dreaming or awake. Like that's sort of the sensation I get when I read his book. And again, they're incredible. The narratives are incredibly imaginative, and they really draw you in. So he has many books, but Norwegian Wood was the one that really turned me on to Murakami as an author. So I highly recommend checking out his work. The second one is a book called Barbarian Days. And this is by an author, William Finnegan, who he's a journalist at the New Yorker, and the book it's a memoir, and it really is it's an adventure story that kind of follows this the author's life from growing up in the 1960s in Southern California and Hawaii, and his sort of journey embracing surf culture. So this resonates with me. I'm a surfer, and so this story for me is it's a great sort of way to sort of explore and relive a lot of the great experiences that you have as a surfer, exploring new places and new places to surf. It's a great book. And it follows his entire life and sort of his journeys, through career and personal loss and exploration. And then, how surfing kind of fits through all of those points in his life. And while his life has changed and evolved, his passion for surfing remained strong. It's a brilliant story. Third one I will touch on is Leonardo da Vinci by Walter Isaacson. Again, I mean, Leonardo da Vinci just goes without saying, just an incredible individual. But this particular story, it's based on, I think, like thousands of pages from his notebook. And it's a deep look at his creative genius, not only as a painter, but as a scientist, as an inventor, a biologist, an engineer, a musician, among many other things. And so what's striking for me in this story is like his intense passion for learning. He obsessively observed the world around him, and he sort of conjured up these, fantastical inventions and ideas and theories that often were not even widely accepted until decades later or longer. And so it's a great look at his life and his creative genius. So it's quite inspiring. So I encourage folks to dig into it. People inspire me. Yeah, geez. Related to this topic, an individual that jumps out to me is a designer by the name of Tibor Kalman, a true provocateur in design. His career is known for lots of really great evocative design. I'll say that, one area that really stands out in his career is his role as editor-in-chief at Color magazine in the 1990s, which was this is a magazine that was funded by the fashion label Benetton, and really Color sought to increase public awareness of social issues, and so that was really what this magazine is dedicated to. And he used Tibor Kalman in his work. He used just like striking design and imagery, typography, juxtaposition of photographs that were often manipulated in some way, and he used them in a very provocative way. And so they were truly intended to grab attention and bring some more visceral reaction to bear. So I encourage folks to look at his work. Still inspiring today. And then, I want to say that I'm not going to call out a specific individual, but like I'm fortunate to work with just a lot of really very talented, smart, creative individuals. In my career, I've been really fortunate to engage with people from a wide range of backgrounds, from theater to business to art, and I find that really inspiring. So I try to draw inspiration from folks that I interact with every day, and I imagine lots of people listening to this can relate to that. We find inspiration in those around us, and that's incredibly important. If there's a third, I'll touch on very quickly. An artist, a historical artist named Alexander Calder. I think this name will sound familiar to a lot of people. He was an engineer and fine artist. And one thing in particular, he's known for lots of sort of creating kinetic sculptures and whatnot. But there's one thing that he did in his career that I just find fascinating is he created this circus, and this circus was made of these little figurines and these little kind of like mechanical structures that he would make, that featured lots of different characters. And he actually performed they're toys essentially, but he performed this circus in Paris, I think maybe in the 1920s, to at the time very well-known artists like Mondrian and others, and it's just fascinating. You can find video and certainly pictures of this, but I'm just fascinated by this grown man performing this toy circus, and these are all little characters and things that he engineered himself, and he came up with the story and the performance and delivered it quite passionately. So I find a lot of just delight and joy in revisiting that work.
Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your wonderful insights. We are looking forward to host you again in our upcoming episode. Thanks for your great time.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be here. So thank you so much for having me.